This is fun. See, this is not just a case of this episode. I never know how to start a podcast. Like anyone who
No.
listens to Léim Thart, yeah, I was going to say anyone who listens to Léim Thart will know I never know how to start a podcast. Um, so I think this just in. Bohan Navar leaves Raidió to pursue a solo career. Will we start with that?
Yeah, go on. Why not?
I was about to say, should we have asked for permission to do this?
No.
To be like, sorry, Emma.
Emma Ní Carroll is scrolling who, but Slán.
We're just branching off. We're doing our own thing, to explore our own
We've realised we work better as a trio.
We realised we worked better as
As
a
a
trio,
throuple.
and we wanted language fluidity to be able to use Berla. We wanted permission to swear, fuck, and rudder bit ally, I suppose. I don't know. Just near has the that we'd be tied to recording on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Are you going to send this to her?
No, she can discover it herself when she listens.
Oh, class. Okay.
Yeah,
good.
so the reason why I've gathered you all here today, that sounds like the start of a best man speech.
Yeah.
Or a priest,
priest.
at a wedding.
Or something from
Something
the
from The
office.
Office. I really need to watch The Office, but that's for another day. Is that I didn't expect to be doing this episode, but that's the best kind of one, isn't it? I haven't done a review episode on Léim Thart in a very, very long time. But all of a sudden, I find out that two of my Buhan Navarre friends like Billie Eilish. So I was like, fuck yeah, let's do this. And yeah, so we've no plan, just like we never do. So, Keita Agan, we got Cian, we got Connor. Talk amongst yourselves.
How's it going?
I'm so nervous because I know whenever we record stuff, it just never goes like it's supposed to. We get so giddy, and I'm already giddy, not even like 5 minutes into this. So
We'll
it's
be
gonna
fine though,
fun.
because it never goes according to plan, but we have no plan. So it's grand. There's nothing to go wrong
Yeah.
unless all our laptops simultaneously catch fire. We'll be grand.
Murphy's Law, though, Cian. Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law, yeah.
We never have a plan when we record on Buhan Navarre, and it's the same thing today. We have to keep our traditions alive. We realise that the three of us work well as panelists, so we're going to do a review of Billie Eilish's latest album, Happier Than Ever. I had to think for a second there about what the title of the album was. But yeah, anyways, it's her second album. She released her first one, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go, back in March 2019. If my memory is correct, it was the 28th, might be 29th. And she obviously dominated the world then for 2019 as a 17-year-old, which is incredible. Saw her at Electric Picnic. It was good fun. She's kept a high profile since. She scooped a load of Grammys. She had a movie this year, and she's released her second album. So that's where we're at right now. It just got released a few days ago. We're gonna deep dive into it. So if we start off, like, what were the ideas or kind of notions that you guys had about Billie Eilish stuff based off of her first album? Like, probably, yeah, towards end of 2019, once you'd had time to consume the album, know more about her before she started new stuff.
I think the main thing I got from her was like her first album was very much trying to establish a certain kind of image and like a musical image, not just something like actual visual, but like audio as well. And that what you were getting was like she's just doing her own thing. It was like really weird music. Like Bury a Friend is really, really strange, really mad. Like you're not expecting them. And then at the same time, like really like sweet vocals over it all, under some like really, really dark music and dark content as well. Um, so I think that was like the main impression that I got from her first album.
Yeah, like I would agree. It's completely experimental, which is like something that I think not very many people do. And I think obviously then when I'd been listening to her for a while and I obviously read up better and then found out that Phineas was her brother, and then like you listen to Phineas's music and it's very much in the same kind of breath of Billie Eilish's first album to an extent. Like obviously it's a lot like not as experimental, I would say. It's more of in the pop kind of breath, but like her first album, My Strange Addiction as well. Like we were just talking about The Office there before we start recording, and she's used like samples from The Office and has Michael Scott talking, and you're thinking like this is just genius. Like who does this and who does it so well? And you can just see her kind of personality. She's like, yeah, this is me. I'm Billie Eilish. I'm going to do what I want to do. You're just going to like kind of deal with it. And then like once you learn more about her and you learned what she kind of went through over the past couple of years, like with that kind of dark imagery that Keane was talking about, um, you see that she's a lot more versatile than just some pop princess that kind of came out with the
For
woodwork. And
sure. And oh my goodness, do I love My Strange Addiction. um, yeah, trying to think back. I definitely had probably the same kind of ish impression that you guys had. But yeah, so it wasn't until probably the middle of 2018 when she dropped You Should See Me in a Crown.
yeah, like she was
She
around for
was.
years. Like she was on like SoundCloud and she was getting thousands and millions of views, and everyone
Yeah.
sleeping on her until somebody like literally just, until a record label came was like, we're going to turn you into a star, and then she kind of just
I
went
remember the
massive.
first time I heard her was obviously a lot later. The news was March 2019. This was just before the album came out, and my friend, I was away on holidays with my friend down in Killarney, and she was like, "Oh, like my sister told me about this artist, and she had this really weird video, and I don't like it. What do you think of it?" And it was the video to Bury a Friend, and I was like, "This is class! Like I love this so much." So that's how I ended up started listening to her then, and then like was absolutely buzzing for her album to come out because it was going to be in the same vein, which it was for a lot of tracks. It lived up to the hype of that one song anyway.
But like as well with Billie Eilish, I think what people weren't expecting from her was an album that was so
Mm.
dark and gritty. Like, because she obviously was a teenager and she was 17, and you were thinking this is going to be like, not to draw comparisons, but like Olivia Rodrigo, her angsty teenager phase with Sour. People were kind of expecting this, but Billie Eilish was like, no, like I've had my problems, I'm, depressed, and I'm going to make this album, and it's going to scare people, and it is supposed to be scary, but this is me. And I think that was so great about it.
I think
For
to compare
sure.
this album though, like the new one with like her first one, this is something that struck me was they're both kind of there's a lot of darkness in both of them, but for some reason the looking at the first album now, the darkness and everything that's in it is kind of cliche and like there's a little bit of like shock value to it. And then with the kind of stuff that she's talking about, the darkness that's in this new album, it's a lot more real and it feels a lot more honest and
Hmm.
based in actual experiences. Like the first one could have been based in actual experiences as well, but it seemed like there was a bit of a distance between it, like by creating like the image and the aesthetic behind it. But with this one, it's a lot more sort of bare bones. And even in the production on this album, I think it's a lot more stripped back in certain songs, and it puts a lot more emphasis on like the vocals and her actual lyrics and the message that she's trying to say directly.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. Like I think like the first album, looking back on it, it's like a caricature of what she is, and like it's very immature. Like it feels immature, and it feels like
Mm.
she's definitely grown in the last 2 years, in the last 3 years, obviously. And I think, like you said, this is very much direct. And like when I was listening to it, I was like, she's purging every bad thing that's ever happened to her. And she's I'm getting older, and I'm learning to deal with things. And you know what? Like I'm not going to take it anymore. I think that was kind of what struck me about this album. It was definitely like a purging of all the bad. Like, she went into a studio with a sage, and she was sage in the studio, and she's like, this is me. I'm getting rid of all these bad experiences. But yeah, no, I think that's the comparison that I could draw between the two albums anyway.
Yeah. And I put off in a way, even once when I said I'd heard of Billie Eilish, did nothing about it. When I actually heard her stuff, which was when You Should See Me in a Crown drop, I nearly by choice then ignored her because I thought this is too much of a character. She's being controlled by a label. This is all a front. There's not much to this. It's not a bad song, but the whole image and idea that's being put out is very much exaggerated, not real. That's what was going through my head. And then when the party's over dropped, I heard it for the first time ever when I played it live on Raidió because I just decided to put it onto the playlist without ever listening to it. I had chills listening to that. And then, yeah, I loved the album. So when we moved on to this one, I agree. It feels more real. Feels like, not that she had no control in the first one, but it obviously feels like she has more control now. And obviously, that comes with experience, comes with age, having a proper launch to an album, whereas all the way up to her first album, she was building her profile and her platform and everything like that. And then she reached that. So now she actually had a place to actually, she had kind of had a square one to be able to start out again. It was like the same with Dua Lipa. Her first album was very staggered. There wasn't as much of a plan to it long term. But then once it dropped, she took that and then started from scratch again and created Future Nostalgia and made more of an album cycle out of it. And she's done it with this one. Happier than ever. Not even sure where to start. What were so like it there I liked the writing a lot. There were a lot of good songs. It was definitely yeah, it was definitely like yeah, I agree. The darkness wasn't as dark in a way on the album. I agree because like I feel like everyone got to know her as she's this dark person, you know, all black and spiders everywhere and horror movies and stuff like that.
Like the first album is very gothic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there seems to be less of a front. There seems to be
yeah,
less of a front.
I think that's an interesting point because I think she frames it as in like I am happy, but there's still kind of quite dark messages here. Do you know,
Yeah,
like the whole album, you immediately open the album, you see that she's happier than ever, and you're thinking, okay, this is going to be actually quite a joyful album. And then when you get into it, you're kind of like, maybe I'm wrong, like, and you kind of are wrong. Like, and I suppose the further you get into it, and I think it's not really until kind of maybe I think not my responsibility hits is kind of where I kind of realized I was like, okay, yeah, like she's not actually okay here, but she's still a lot better than she has been in the past. Which is interesting, I think.
I felt like that was like part of the essence of the idea of it being called Happier Than Ever and her being happier than ever is that she now has it written and it's out of her system and she kind of has to put it out there because there's always a yin and yang. I feel like that's something I thought of after because obviously same as you, Connor. I was thinking there's a lot of darkness still on the album, but I feel like that's the essence of it, the catharsis.
but you can see that even in the very first song, like it is about like getting older and like there's all these positives. Like she's getting better at different things. She's focusing on what makes her happy. Like like, oh, I'm happier than ever, but that's my or at least that's my endeavor, that kind of thing. Like that's what we're focused on. But even in that first end, like just towards the end of that song, it just twists it. And she says, like, it wasn't my decision to be abused. And there's just like that sting just in that very first song. And I think that like that sets the tone then for the rest of the album. Is that there is this undercurrent of that. It's not as explicit as it was in the first album. You have to listen and dig a little deeper into it, and then you get that sense of darkness.
Yeah, I mean, we learned that even in the movie. She definitely her movie on Apple TV Plus in February. Um, she's definitely did get overworked with things. I remember even at the time feeling so hyper aware of her being overworked, even while she was there with a smile and everything like that. I was thinking even when I saw her at Electric Picnic Live, I thought it's great to see her live and it's great to actually see kind of like the hottest artist in the world while they are the hottest artist in the world because like you can lots of artists have been the hottest artist in the world but this was while she was still on that phase but there was still like a little bit of guilt. I nearly felt a little bit guilty for being there because I felt in a way like I was contributing to her kind of stress and anything overwhelming her.
And so I'm trying to imagine her singing "Getting Older" live, and the bit where she says like, "The things I once enjoyed just keep me employed." Like if she's singing that live to the crowd, and we're like, oh, okay, well, sorry about that. Like it's
Yeah. Yeah. Because I feel like but I still feel like she had it better than probably lots who
far better.
came
Yeah.
before because these stories have come out later on when these female, especially female artists, when they're maybe in their late 20s and starts talking about how crazy it was. And even in the movie, she meets Katy Perry at Coachella and Katy goes up to her and she says, just so you know, this is going to be insane for 10 years. Call me anytime. You can talk to me whenever you want. And Billie was like, I know you know, like everything that we go through. So I feel in a way, I feel kind of happy that Olivia Rodrigo got big this year, especially as kind of still a teenager, that the pandemic nearly clamped down a little bit on the craziness she would be experiencing. I know she still probably has all the craziness online, but I think that probably will be good for her going forward as she now has experience putting one album out and once the world starts opening up again, she will have all that perspective, but she won't have had to put up with all the craziness that predecessors like Billie Eilish or like Lord had to put up with as young teenagers.
She definitely won't have the media kind of attacking her, or like not attacking her, but like obviously the media. She won't be going around doing interviews on like every station, the kind of being, she didn't obviously do much promo for that album. I think with Olivia Rodrigo as well, she had High School Musical, the musical, the series. Kind of, she was already out there as a kind of public figure, and then she kind of just dropped an album, and everyone was kind of like, "Oh, okay, she is actually a good singer as well as obviously she was a good actress." But she was already kind of there. Whereas like with Billie, I think looking back on it, she kind of just came out of nowhere. Like we've already kind of touched on that, and she came out of nowhere. And was anybody there kind of preparing her for that? Like she was getting millions of listens on SoundCloud, but sure, like anybody could be listening to it on SoundCloud and it's class. But like the minute somebody catches wind of you and you've become a pop star, you know, obviously there's no longer that barrier between you and the world, and people think you are theirs, and you know you almost become a commodity. And I think that's dangerous and horrible. And I think that's, you know, the point you made there, Rory. Like at least Olivia Rodrigo isn't being thrown to the wolves at the moment. And we are supposed to try to get better at this, but I don't think we are. And you know, at least the pandemic has kind of quelled it a little bit. But
For sure. So if we leap into the album, I realize we haven't talked too much about the album itself, but if we look, obviously throughout, there's 16 tracks on the album, and prior to the album being released, I think I don't have a number in my head, but the ones according to the site that were officially released as singles are My Future, Therefore I Am, Your Power. I know Lost Cause I think was just a promotional single, and then NDA. And then obviously the title track, Happier Than Ever, is the new single. How did we feel about the selection of songs for singles?
Wasn't sure about My Future. That didn't really grab me as much. Like I think I liked Therefore I Am, and I get that that's a catchy pop one, and that's what got me. And that has nearly like 500 million streams on Spotify now at this stage. So obviously that was the right, you know, as a promotional single or as a single, like that's obviously was a good choice because obviously people liked it. I think what was it? Yeah, Therefore I Am, and I thought Lost Cause was excellent. And what I love is if you listen to it on Spotify, like throughout the album, they have the little notes from the artists, and like there's not a whole lot of for this album on what Billie has put up, but on that one, it's like just it literally just says the lyrics say it all, and that's all you need for Lost Cause. Like it's fairly clear, like it's a very pointed
yeah,
song and everything about it. Yeah, so
I didn't really like latch on to My Future at the start, but now that I've come back to it, I absolutely love it because I this time 10 years ago, right after Amy Winehouse's death, I was spoon fed her by my dad, and then I just fell in love with everything Amy Winehouse, and I still in my head somewhere in like a spiritual airy fairy world, Amy Winehouse vibes to My Future, and if she wants to, she features on it. Obviously loved Therefore I Am. Your Power, not that into. Lost Cause, also not that into. But when NDA dropped, oh my goodness, I loved it. And I loved the video as well. And none of that is graphics. She has cars speeding by her in real
I
time.
I
haven't
haven't
seen it.
seen
Sorry.
the video. Sorry.
It's really good. It's worth a watch. And then Happier Than Ever. Obviously, I kept away from Twitter and everything like that until I had actually listened to the album. I didn't want any spoilers or for anything to influence my opinions, at least my first impressions. Um, but the way that Happier Than Ever builds into this rock song, as someone who does not really listen to rock or whatever way this has been done, it's so motherfucking glorious. And the music video is insane. And I'm really glad that it's the single that she chose to drop at the same time, like to coincide with the album release.
It's the absolute pinnacle of the album. Like it brings everything in together, and like it's just so angry,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I really just lets it out. Like that's like what you were talking about earlier about how, you know, the album is cathartic and all that. Like that's it. That's the catharsis in one song right there. The way it builds up, and it's. I was gonna say earlier, like the first album that she had was there were so many different things in it. It showed that she could go anywhere and do anything, and that was still like part of her repertoire. But something like that wasn't, and that's why it's still a surprise. Like you're going through even in this album, there's lots of different influences in it. There's like some R&B in it. There's the bossa nova kind of thing. There's so many different genres in it, or like little tastes of genres in it. And but there's nothing like that, and that's what it just takes you by surprise totally. Like it just gobsmacks you,
It's a total surprise.
and it's unreal. Yeah, and it's fantastic. I think it's easily the best album, the song of the album.
I'm kind of annoyed it didn't make, like, it wasn't the last song, like it wasn't the closing song of the album. But like that as well, then like Male Fantasy also works as a very good closer. But Happier Than Ever is one of the strongest ones, I think. I think it's between NDA and Happier Than Ever would be my two favorites on the album, though I think NDA is just one of those songs that's like, you know, that kind of was what caught my attention. in the lead up to the release. Obviously, when the singles were kind of being released, we were talking about that, but that is the one that kind of caught my attention.
There's a clever bit with NDA as well, in that it references previous songs on the album. It bring in the lyrics, like what is it? It brings in. It actually says it didn't change my number. It says getting older, and it says my future, like all in the same verse, which is similar to what she did on Goodbye on her last album, where she actually brought in like the music samples from all the other songs into it at the end. So it's not quite the same. It's just there. Again, it's more subtle
Yeah.
than what was on the first album. But yeah, it's really clever, a clever song.
I think Happier Than Ever, yeah, would have been a good ending, but I feel like part of me would have felt it was a bit cliched if it was the ending. And I kind of like that it's almost like lets everything out and you're still kind of heavy breathing after the energy released, and then kind of like you're brought back down to earth with male fantasy. Because even like the word I have written here on my notes, I can feel the catharsis on the word miserable in verse 1 of Happier Than Ever, because some way she draws it out and it feels so heartbreaking. But male fantasy is like heartbreaking, like almost on another level.
It's a stark reminder that she's still not okay, which is,
Yeah.
she's like, I'm getting better, I'm happier than ever, but actually I'm still going to go back to therapy. I'm like amused for male pornography. It's like that really kind of, oh God, like she has actually been really sexualized. And she talks about, I think she talks Not My Responsibility as well, and how you don't like me with clothes on, but you don't like me, you don't like me with my clothes on, but you don't like me with my clothes off either. Like, I can't help you, and I don't think that's my responsibility. But people paint her as this person who wears baggy clothes. She went on Vogue, on the cover of Vogue, and she wore a corset, and people were like, oh my God, suddenly Billie Eilish is, she's not a child anymore. Yeah, she wants to be sexualized, and she's gone back on everything that she's fought against.
Yeah.
And she's like, can I not just do what I want to do? And why do you think you have the right to comment on me? And nobody does, but obviously that's just how everyone views her. And like, it is completely gross. And like, the absolute abuse that she's gotten and harassment she's gotten about her body and what she wears.
Yeah, I wish that I had ended up happier than ever. Like, I feel like I read her explanation for it, and like that she didn't want to end on like a sour note. She didn't want to end on a bad note. She didn't want to. That's why it ends with like, I don't want to hate you and all that kind of thing. Like, I get that, and it's kind of like being the bigger person, but I just wish she just revel in the hatred and the anger and just let that stand. And like, your next album be, considerate and, have moved on, but just like embrace the rage for, just for one album, just let it end like that and just be like, you know what, I'm pissed off, like, and this is the way it's going to stand. Like, there's a level of maturity to it, in that, like, no, I want to like be the bigger person or whatever. But like on the other side, I'm just like, no, like, just, express your rage, let it stand, and let that be it. Like,
Yeah, for sure. Now, I'm not going to let us go 1 minute longer without talking about oxytocin, because that one
yes.
hit me like a sucker punch. I had been told by my friend ahead of time that it was great, and I said, I'm only at My Future, which is the track before. And I was like, don't tell me anything else. And I kid you not, I had to pause it 11 seconds in because I had to take a deep breath for myself, because I was thinking, geez, I'm in for something here. And then so I pressed play again and had to pause it again at like 35 seconds, because I was thinking, no, I'm actually still not ready for this. And I've no other way of describing it other than a sucker punch.
Yeah, it's absolutely unreal, and like, it's straight away, you're just like, imagine, like, it's hard to imagine now because of the year and a half that's gone on, but like, you're just straight away transported to some dark, sweaty club, and like, there's just like bright lights is flashing. You can't really see anything. Like, everyone's dancing together in a huge writhing mask. Like, it's just mental, and that's the kind of, you're straight away in there, and it's just like the way she sings in it, the like high pitched bit in it, where it's kind of breathless, is like this siren call. Yeah, I think enchanting is the best way of putting it. Like, and it's just calling you into this like rave that essentially is going on throughout the track, and it's just, yeah, it's excellent. And compared to, like you said, it's a sucker punch because it's like nothing that goes before. Like, a lot the songs that come before are a lot more laid back. Like, they're a lot more casual. You have like Billy Bossa Nova, which is like this more Latin influence. Didn't Change My Mind, which is this kind of ska reggae thing to it. Like, and then My Future is a lot more relaxed, and then this one just comes out of nowhere.
Phineas was on something that day, and I'm really, really thankful for it. But it's the fifth track, and I've had this theory for a couple of years, and this just proves the theory that tracks 3 and or 5 on a pop album are the most important. Like singles excluded, and usually you will find a single in one of them. Other examples of this are Levitating by Dua Lipa, Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo, and Liability by Lorde.
Yeah, I can't think of any other albums, so I can't disprove your theory. So you're saying track 3 or 5, or track 3 and 5?
Yeah, usually if you listen to just about any pop album, especially the big ones, track 3 or 5 or both will usually be a piece of gold, and will usually, if it's not already released released as a single ahead of time, it could very well be released as a single, or it will be a fan favorite, something like that.
Miley Cyrus, Plastic Hearts, number 3, Angels Like You, would prove that theory as well. It's quite one of those ones where she's like,
I mean, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? Track 3 is Zanny. Track 5 is All the Good Girls Go to Hell.
points taken.
I would say the fan favorites, but
Not as strong a theory on that case, but All the Good Girls Go to Hell was a single.
and then again, like, do we really count track 1 of When We All Fall Asleep, considering it's 13 seconds and not really anything? Like, Really Bad Guy is the first track on that.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you on that. I'm going through albums now to try and prove the theory even more. Let me see.
Which means then, if we're using that counting system, then track 3 is You Should See Me in a Crown, and track 5 is Wish You Were Gay.
Both stellar tracks.
Which I think.
Even if we go back to Dua Lipa's first album, track 3 is Hotter Than Hell, track 5 is IDGAF.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
You got us there.
But yeah, Oxytocin.
I am not a fan. Well, I wasn't originally. I feel like I may have to reevaluate.
Connor has left the chat.
You are.
No, right. Do you know the question you posed to
Yeah.
me before this? We like pick 4 tracks that we would cut off the album. The first one I wrote down was Oxytocin.
Fuck off.
No, right.
How do we remove him?
It's just-
Rory, how do we take him out? This is shocking. No, this does not start. No.
So I have
Yes.
So just so you guys know,
Yes, he's
as
gone.
we're recording this on Zoom, I have put Connor into the waiting room. He's getting, I would want to say 5 minutes because it's track 5, but I feel like that would be cruel. So I'll give him 2 minutes. So Cian, how
2
you
minute
doing?
timeout.
How you been?
I'm doing far better now that idiot is gone out of this chat. Because what?
But yeah.
How can Oxytocin? How can that be the one you're gonna cut out?
Yeah, I
there's
really
no way.
disagree with that. So how's your day been?
Oh, it's been great. Yeah,
Good.
I've just been chilling at home.
Oh, that's
Just-
lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
living my best life. Getting ready to move to Glasgow soon.
Oh yeah, great. When are you
Yeah,
moving again?
sure. It's sometime in September. When I have a place sorted, like that's my big adult job at the minute, is finding somewhere to live.
Okay. I was just worried you'd be going because I'll be going away soon for a couple of weeks. So I was worried you might be. I'm like just to Kerry.
Oh, right,
But I
okay.
was worried you'd be
Exciting though.
gone before I got back. Yeah, always exciting.
Whereabouts in Kerry?
I'm not going to say that publicly.
Ooh, you don't want the stalkers to.
Yeah, don't want the stalkers. We have a Connor in the waiting room. Okay, gonna give him a stern talking to now. Insert waiting music.
Hello.
I hope you've had time to reflect on everything you just said.
Now, Connor, are you going to be a good boy? What have we learned from this little exercise?
To agree with Rory and Keane. No,
I mean, not on everything, but like on this particular.
I've
point.
just given it a quick listen, and like, look, it was one of the ones that just didn't step out, like jump out to me.
I'm still. What?
I don't.
He's asking for it now.
How
I've
does it
just
not
given it a
jump out
quick
to you?
listen, and I'm like, okay, yeah, fair enough. But like originally, when I listened to the album, it was actually the first one that I skipped, and that might be my fault because I skipped it.
You were clearly asleep. You were clearly asleep or something. Like,
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. Can we move on?
I think we should.
I think we
I
should.
think we should.
Okay. Well, let me think. Okay, if I asked the two of you, what would your top 5 be? It doesn't have to be in a ranking, like in no particular order. What would your top 5 be? And a little reason why.
Okay. Oxytocin. That should be obvious. And for all the reasons that I just said, because it's amazing. Obviously, Happier Than Ever. I think Therefore I Am and Lost Cause. And I know they're singles, so it's like really cheesy to pick them. But I think it's excellent. And like just the way the bass sounds on Lost Cause is just so delicious. Like you can it's like he's playing it right beside your ear. Like it's just a fantastic song. And then one song that I did really, really like, but I'm gonna be controversial later and say I'd actually remove it from the album, is Goldwing.
I kind of see where that's coming from. I think it's great, but there's no resolution to it.
It's way too short. It's way too short. And it's teasing.
And it's yeah, there's no resolution, but it's in a bad way. See, I felt like male fantasy, there was no real
Mm.
resolution to it, but it was in a good way. Whereas this had no resolution, and when I was doing a review of the album, I did have to dock a couple of points off Goldwing because it just doesn't feel complete.
Yeah. I mean, I get that it's a good concept as well. What she's trying to do is like send a message to perhaps Olivia Rodrigo and other women like her are going to come up through the pop industry, and kind of keep your wits about you and all this kind of thing. And it's brilliant. And I love the how it ends, like the track towards the end. I love how there's this whole choral thing at the start. It really reminded me of a lot of the songs on Awaken My Love by Childish Gambino, where you had that kind of choir involved. I think a lot of the chord progressions are quite similar as well. So I loved it, but then it was just way too short. It was teasing. Like she could have given it a bit more time, have some breathing room, let it go on for longer. And if not, then just don't put it on the album.
Yeah. Connor?
Yeah, I would agree with Cian there with Goldwing. Like, I think that was one of the other ones I'd written down. With Goldwing, I think the album does at some points, I feel, just very like it's not needed to be this long. And like there is some songs where you're just kind of like, okay, I get the point, kind of move on with it. But my top 5 favorites that I've just scribbled down there would probably have to be Happier Than Ever, NDA, Therefore I Am, just because it's like the original Billy. It's like it's that kind of experimental male fantasy, and Everybody Dies. I think the lyrics in it are just like, everybody dies, that is no surprise, but like I'm kind of here and I'm going to tell you that you've made me basically, not that like she wants to die, but she's so aware of her mortality because of what she's been through. And I think that once again is coming back to that stark kind of scariness. And it's also one of the calmer tracks on the album, which I think is good as well. Like I really like Billy when she's at her quietest and at her like, softest. And I think that's the track that kind of really stood out to me when I listened to the album the first time, just because of the lyrics in it. And obviously I skipped Oxytocin, so I'm not gonna not gonna mention the war. But yeah, I would say they're my 5. Everyone Dies, Male Fantasy, Happier Than Ever, NDA, and then Therefore I Am.
I would put my top 5 Getting Older, Oxytocin, Haley's Comet, NDA, and Happier Than Ever, with a, what is the word I'm looking for? Honorable mention to My Future.
Can I ask you why you chose Haley's Comet?
I wasn't sure if it was Halley's or Haley's.
Yeah, I
Um,
thought it was Haley's, but then I realized
I think she pronounces it Hades, but I think it's actually Hades. Or maybe the other way around.
in my head it was Halley's, but I think she
Yeah, it
said
is.
Haley's. So I was like, oh, that must be right. Cause up to that point, it felt like the closest song to her previous material. Obviously, Therefore I Am kind of took that crown after of being the most similar to her previous stuff, but up to that point, Halley's Comet felt like it, and it just felt very sweet. And I really liked how cozy it was. I loved the instrumental break. The vocal production on the outro was so dreamy, and I felt like I was just being wrapped in a security blanket, and it was just really, really nice. It was kind of like a Sunday morning in bed. Not even, no, Saturday morning. Sundays are gross. But it was like a nice lion in a really comfy bed, but it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be like a big hotel bed. It could just be that you're on like a nice chill holiday with your friends and you wake up and you're just like, I'm so happy to be here. And that's why I chose it.
I did love Hades Come. I didn't put it in my top 5, but I feel it's gonna be one of those ones that grows on me. And I'm gonna like after I'm sick of like the big bassy singles, like that's gonna start rising up as favorite. And I'm a sucker for any kind of astronomical reference of any kind, anything to do with science in a song. So yeah, absolutely love that. And then, like just the whole, like you said about the vocals, like the harmonies that are in it are divine. Like they're fantastic.
I think if I had to like do what you said, Cian, and remove four songs, um, I would definitely Billy Bossa Nova, um, Overheated, Everybody Dies, and Your Pair, because they all, to an extent, come too close to flatlining energy wise for me. They don't feel just chill. They actually feel like they're on the verge of dying. If I had to pick five songs to get rid of, I'd get rid of Lost Cause. It just didn't really appeal to me. But yeah, they just felt quite meh to me. But songs like Lost Cause and Your Power, I can see why they're important to her and the overall narrative and everything like that. But I just don't feel like they were done well. So I would get rid of those four.
I'd have to just disagree massively about Overheated. I love,
Yeah.
Oh, we've had this conversation, yeah.
yeah. We had this conversation. Well, briefly. I don't see how you couldn't bop to it. I think it's fantastic, and I love the how it goes from Not My Responsibility, like how that beat goes on while she's given the monologue, and then it comes into an actual song. Then, like, I think if you're going to get rid of Overheated, you have to get rid of Not My Responsibility because I don't see how that resolves without it. For me, they're actually like essentially the same song.
I thought Not My Responsibility was much better as a spoken word interlude.
Yeah, no, it is. It's really good, but I don't see how that would just end then. It's similar to what we were saying about Goldwing, like, or what I was saying about Goldwing. Anyways, you have that like the idea and the musical ideas that are behind that, and then it just gets cut short. It would be the same thing with Not My Responsibility if that just ended there, because that doesn't go anywhere. Then that doesn't resolve, but then it does get resolved by having it Overheated. And I just really liked Overheated, so I just have to disagree.
No, that's right. Like, but I agree with the point there where like Billy does that whole spoken word into a beat kind of thing really well. Like obviously in the first album, it was obviously exclamation mark, that part which like, oh, it's my Invisalign, and she went straight into the beat of bad guy. And you're like, oh, that's just something that isn't really done. And then with like Overheated and My Responsibility are Not My Responsibility. Like she does the exact same thing. She drops on that beat, and then the next song just picks up exactly where that beat kind of left off, and you are suddenly caught back, and your attention span is coming back to you, even if you might have got a little bit bored of the album up until that point. But yeah, no, I agree, and I agree with you, Rory, as well. If you're taking songs away, probably Your Power and Lost Cause. So originally my four was going to be Oxytocin, but I'm not going to mention the war again. I would have said Billy Bossa Nova. I would have said Goldwing. I would have also said Halley's Common, because I just did like that. It didn't appeal to me. I thought it was quite boring. And the reason I originally didn't say Your Power, Lost Cause, but after hearing you talk about it, I'm kind of like, maybe they could be gotten rid of. But I think the narrative of the album, if you did want to affect the narrative of the album, probably Halley's Comet, Billy Bossa Nova, and Goldwing would save the overall narrative of the album. But if you got rid of Lost Cause and Your Power and NDA to an extent, you kind of would lose track of what actually is happening.
Yeah, because NDA bounces off the back of Your Power.
Well, it goes straight into Therefore I Am as well. Like the beat continues and then goes slamming into.
But like that, those are little things that can always be changed and removed. But what would your four be, Cian?
Okay, male fantasy, and I'm gonna say these in pairs. Actually, is male fantasy and Everybody Dies, because there's a few themes in the album. There's like the whole idea of getting older, of trying to be happy, of being happy in yourself, following your own thing. There's also the fairly strong theme of abuse and being controlled and everything like that through it. One of the themes that's in it, and it's in both of those songs, is like what you're saying about Everybody is like things not lasting forever and confronting your own mortality, which is an interesting concept, but it's not really developed strongly enough in the album, I don't think. And they're both in male fantasy and Everybody Does. So I think if you got rid of both of them, you're not really all you're losing is that small theme that's not really explored enough. So I don't think you'd be missing out on much. And Goldwing as well, even though I love Goldwing, I'd get rid of it. And we seem to be absolutely slandering Billy Bossa Nova, and I would get rid of it, but it is a good song. It just, I don't know, it doesn't do anything for the album. It does seem surplus to requirements. I think that a problem with like music in general these days is like how B-sides don't exist anymore. Because I think it would be an excellent B-side and people would love it for that. But I don't think if you're going to treat an album as a whole, like as a cohesive narrative piece, then that doesn't need to be there. That could be a B-side to another single.
Yeah, for sure. So, closing album remarks?
I think personally it's an album that's a lot more complex. Like you need to listen to it a lot of times, and I've listened to it a good few times. But at the same time, I feel like there's still bits that I've missed out on, or that I haven't listened to enough. Um, and it's a fairly long-winded album. Like it's not one that you'll just listen to and you'll get the bops out of it, and you're kind of like, grand, that's it, I'll shelve it again. Like you do really need to be prepared to go into this album and think, I'm going to learn a lot about Billie Eilish as a person. I'm going to learn a lot about her relationship with the media, her relationship with her, her mental health, and her relationship with, to an extent, her parents and record label. I think we made this point not on the actual podcast, but I think we did it maybe chatting on Twitter, Rory. But her record label didn't have a lot of hand in this. And I think you made the point earlier, whereas like you didn't listen to her originally because she was somebody who was so kind of manufactured, or she was trying to create this image. And I think this album is so far removed from her record label. Like this was definitely just Billie saying, I need to make this album or I'll never be able to make music again, kind of sort of thing, which is a very strong closing statement. But yeah, like I think that you need to be prepared going into it. It's a very good album, but it's very much one that you have to be like in the right mind frame to be listening to.
Yeah, to go off that, like what you're saying, they had a lot more, herself and Phineas had a lot more control over. And in fact, the 16 songs they put on the album were the only 16 songs they were going to put on it. Like they worked on those, said, look, this is what's going to be on the album. These are the ones we want. Which fair enough, they're standing up for like their artistic integrity and that's what they want. But I do wonder if that maybe made them short-sighted in what could have been done with the album, like by sticking rigid to like these are the only ones we're gonna do. Because I think, like I was saying, I think it could do with, that's why I was asking the question about, getting rid of 4 songs, because I think it could have done with having a couple of songs removed. And I think them being too focused on that. But then at the same time, you have to look at it as just like, from their artistic perspective, is it a good thing then that they actually just got to control the album and put out exactly what they wanted? Obviously, it was important for them, but does that mean it's important for the listener? Maybe not.
I agree with that kind of wholeheartedly. Like, Billie is kind of painted as this musical genius, and like whatever she kind of does or says is gold. And like, I think maybe with the short-sighted comment there, they might have been short-sighted. They might have think, well, whatever Billie kind of releases, it's going to be amazing. And the album is pretty good, but it's still, you have to look at that and say, maybe if there was just a bit more manufactured, like if there was a bit more manufactured pop on it, maybe, or something that would like kind of, bring the whole thing together. I think it is missing something, and that might be literally that there's too much in it for you to actually really, really love it upon first listen.
Yeah, there is still stuff to listen, but one of the big things that I kind of took away is that we've gotten so many good like coming of age albums from artists around that age bracket, late teens, early 20s, and she could have very easily made a classic coming of age album, and she would do it very well because this album is done very well with a few weak points as we've talked about. But part of me feels like she wouldn't want to do that, but I still feel like she would do a good job of it. It is definitely more cohesive than the debut, and it does feel more like just them. But yeah, it is definitely worth a listen and reading into it a bit. But there is still a bit of an attitude of everything Billie Eilish does is gold, and some stuff on this album could have done with a bit of work. But overall, it's really good, and it's better than I was expecting.
Yeah, I mean, like no one's flawless. You know what I mean? And she is like developing as an artist, and it's incredible to see her. She's developing as an artist and
Yeah.
as like she's grown up. I think it is in a way it's a coming of age album, but like a slightly later on in life coming of age, because like it's like she's come to grips with these different things. She's had to grow up very quickly because of what she's been exposed to. But like the things like getting used to like her mortality and stuff like that. Like I'm looking back at it like I'm like what 7, 8 years older than her, and like I can see the same kind of things that like the same topics she's trying to, not everything obviously, but a lot of the same topics that she's trying to get a handle of, and feeling the same way, that I felt the same way at the time. So it is in a way it is a coming of age album, but it's definitely not a typical one. It's not a stereotype by any means.
I feel like she's come of age between Where Do We Go When We Fall Asleep and then this one, and it's like I'm an adult now and this is me being an adult, and you're not gonna get that whole me begging for your approval. I think that's what's so jarring about this album as well. Like, you know, there's not that kind of nice girl Billy teenager anymore. It's like, I'm an adult now and this is how things are going to be. And if you don't like that, well then you know where the door is. Which I think it's very much an adult album in a sense, you know, and I think that's one of the strongest themes coming from this.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So, on that note, I suppose I should say thank you to the two of you for joining.
Well, you can thank me. I don't know about
Okay, thank you, Cian.
It was my idea.
Right, you are.
It was actually, yeah.
It was his idea. So, if you have any opinions on Billie Eilish's album, make sure to use #Bohan on Twitter to let us know what you think about it.
On that note,
Go listen to the album and stream Oxytocin 3 times just to give Connor the middle finger.